India's budget for 2026-27 is set to be presented soon, and representatives of Indian Industry Chamber CII had met Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman a few days back and given detailed suggestions on behalf of the Indian industry. So what are those recommendations? Let's talk about that with the Director General of CII, Chandrajit Banerjee. Mr. Banerjee, always a pleasure to talk to you.
Great meeting you again. Thank you.
Absolutely. So the budget is round the corner, and let's begin with the health of the Indian industry and how it is doing. Do the current GDP numbers that are out represent or show the on-ground reality for the Indian industry, including for sectoral performances, cost pressures, etc.? And what is your assessment for GDP growth over the next couple of years, considering the global headwinds?
You see, today the announced figures have brought in a lot of surprise, as if whether it's much more than what we really feel on the ground. 7.4. I mean, we expected we expected something around that figure. And really, if you look at what's really on the ground feeling, and even global understanding, global people, global companies, investors, and others who are involved with India, it feels like we are growing even faster. And we are growing well. And I think the estimates at this point in time truly reflects a very strong positive, not just the sentiment, but also what's really happening on the ground. So we have, I believe, therefore, to answer your question in a way, I do believe that we can grow at a much higher rate. And I think the budget and the forthcoming weeks and months and years would really help us get into a much higher growth trajectory for which India is really set for. If we see the type of growth India is going through, it's of course well acknowledged by the world to be a great spot, and we also enjoy a very well managed inflation at this point in time. We are seeing growth in many segments of in manufacturing, say for instance. We are seeing private investments moving up. And I talked about the feeling, because business confidence, if you really look at an index that we bring out, business confidence, the sentiments, it's highest in the last many quarters. If we really look at 6 to 7 quarters, this is the highest which we have ever seen. So the type of the quality of growth, if I may say, has also changed very strongly. So there is a growth which is because of many initiatives of in the policy front, which has helped us also to be a very inclusive growth. The digital side of it has included people. It has increased opportunity for Indian companies, global companies. So it's a strong story.
It's a positive sentiment all in all. Let's come to private capex now. We know that government capital expenditure, or the public capital expenditure, has in a way underpinned growth for the last 3 years. But what do you expect in terms of private capex? It's been cautious, some say. So do you expect that to gradually move up further and play a large role as far as sustaining India's growth momentum is concerned? I was looking at some projections by the RBI. It's saying that it expects a 20% increase in private capex in this financial year. But again, the question is, will it be across the board?
So, what has happened, we have seen, of course, I go back to COVID because that's when this entire focus on capex really played up hugely. And India did such a great, it really stuck out its neck to see to it that we kept the public capex so very strongly on, and at that point in time, and for years together. And that really helped the economy, and that really helped even bring in confidence that really crowded in private sector capex. And yes, for certain years, private sector remained cautious. Private sector was not coming. But that story has changed. If you really look at this year and even last year, I would think that there is great movement in private capex, and it's again across sectors from steel to cement to, if you look at energy, renewables, all of it, and it's going across. And if you really look at also how the rural demand, say for instance, is doing, which is really helping consumer durables also to come up very strongly. We are seeing a good amount of movement in private capex, and the RBI figure, of course, only reinstates the fact that there is a much greater opportunity now. Demand is strong, and even again, I repeat what I said a little earlier about the global new firms coming into it, which also enables many of our existing players to improve or rather enhance their capacity, because demand also rises as one is into that supply chain. So I think all in all, with the private sector capex story is strong, but I would also imagine that the public sector capex is a great tool to keep the private sector, the multiplier effect on the private sector to be on through it.
Absolutely. That brings me to the next question, which is that we know that the budget balances growth and fiscal consolidation. Any recommendations that the industry or you have given to the government on how to boost fiscal discipline, rationalize expenditure, while not compromising on growth prospects and also on capex going forward?
As I mentioned that, I mean, we would really love to see the government focusing on a capex, but there is prudence, of course, which the government has really shown a lot of prudence in the way it has increased capex as well as really looked at fiscal side of things. Now, one would think that the glide path which India has chosen is something which is brought in a lot of confidence, both for on the Indian economy, by agencies, by all communities, be it industry and others, in the way India governs and manages its fiscal discipline. So remaining on the glide path is something that one would obviously expect to happen, which has been there a very strong point over the last few years. But having said that, I would think that we should, of course, look at how we are able to increase, and I would really look at the figures when the budget is, as the budget comes out, to a 12% odd increase in the government capex. Is going to be very critical and important. And I would even think that the debt to GDP ratio, that ratio of 54.4, 54.5 around, that should be, well, we should keep to that with whatever tolerance deviation we could have. But these are ones which give a lot of depth and strength and quality to the economy, and which also helps the government to be to get the space and ability to shore its revenues, as well as also to see how we are able to spend prudently on areas that we should.
Right. From that, let's come to India's export sector. We know that the new thing, the big thing now is the India-EU FTA trade negotiations concluding, but it'll take some time for it to come into fruition and into effect. But what looks distant still is the India-US trade deal. What is the near-term risk really of that deal not happening as yet for the export sector? What will really change once a deal comes through? And any recommendations that you may have made to the finance minister for boosting exports?
See, what has happened over the last few years is India has been very aggressive in terms of looking at countries and regions to see how trade agreements could be entered into. And since quite some time, these trade agreements, what we had signed earlier and what we have been signing now, are quite different. In the way when we signed, we have signed the new trade agreements, be it from Australia right up to UK. If you really look at the entire globe, there are many trade agreements that we have entered into. And of course, yesterday was a celebration of a kind when we talked about the EU-India FTA to be the mother of all trade deals. Now, all of this has a tremendous positive impact on exports from India and also throws up opportunities. It also looks at the type of, what's happening today in the world is looking at reliable supply sources, reliable partners for trading. The world is looking at certainty. Trade requires certain amount of certainty. And India is a very trusted sort of trade partner. So I think that really gives Indian businesses an opportunity. Indian businesses an opportunity to not only increase its export footprints, as you talked about, but it also attracts a lot of, if you see the trade deals that we have signed, has also brought in a lot of investment opportunities for India. And many trade deals are pretty much biased towards how do we get more investments into the country, very smartly done trade deals. And we are seeing that inflow to be very strong now. India has a tremendous demand, 1.4 billion plus people. But India also, if you see many global companies who are manufacturing in India today, are exporting to, it would be surprised, in certain cases more than 100 countries from India. So it is, and with the logistics within India, our infrastructure, our proximity and our roads and our proximity to the ports through better logistics, all of this play, and the efficiency in the ports, all of this, and even if you really look at the digitization part of it on the trade side, these have added to phenomenal efficiencies which have enhanced our trade, our export opportunities. A growing economy would also need imports, right? And a growing economy would also, and there is this classic thing of comparative advantage. So we cannot manufacture everything, and we need not, or we need not produce everything. There are areas where we can be globally dominant and competitive. So we need to prudently understand which, as we move forward, that's the next stage, I would think, that we look at the import basket, we see which are the ones that we could focus on and which are the ones we can produce ourselves for Atmanirbhar Bharat. And as we move ahead, what is today being provided through is to look at different types of market where we were not present. So we have, well, you can say that while we have been forced to look at other markets, but it's also true that the world wanted India to partner. So when European Union talked about mother of all deals, because it knew that it is a two-way win-win. It's a great win for India, and it several effects from employment to the type of credibility that India can establish globally.
Absolutely. It's been 16 to 17 years of negotiations, and finally they've concluded. Let's come to labor codes now. What does the industry think about it? Is it really a game changer of sorts for industry competitiveness and also for jobs creation? And does the proof of the pudding lie in the eating? How difficult could the execution be going forward?
Yeah, so your last point is extremely important in terms of how critical will the implementation be going forward. Now, labor reforms and touching labor issues have always been viewed as if it is, we are going to fire labor. Now, you've seen many companies, many industries, large companies saying that we don't have the number of people that we need to employ. We are not getting people, right? And when we have flexibility in labor laws, it helps companies to increase especially manufacturing as well as services, of course, to enhance the number of people employed. So many avenues get opened up towards employment. I can take a couple of examples, but to bring down those 29 odd labor codes into 4 simplified version actually does not mean like classically it was all understood that, okay, industry is asking for hire and fire. It's really not. It's industry is looking at how it becomes easier to enhance or increase employment, and it's actually creating a large number of employment opportunities. Now, as you know, labor itself is a state subject to, and the center has published the guidelines. The center has published the codes. It is for the states to adopt it. States have already started adopting it and becoming strong implementers. And I think with further focus on quicker and implementation, because what's happening, the story is the best of stories that come out in states that implement. They will, of course, have that headway, that advantage. But then sooner than later, the other states would start getting into this process of implementation. And the political, sometimes decibels that get raised because of labor reforms will be understood in a manner that it is actually helping, and the labor force itself understands that it is helping them to get better avenues of employment. There are the social security part of it, as one sees it. These are areas which are going to be very critical for a country which has such a vast population. And today, when we see the social security part being focused into, and companies being asked to focus into, companies becoming more not just by there are many companies who do it voluntarily, but okay, for us to do it because our laws would be such, it really also enhances the productivity and the mood of labor. And I think that's very, very critical as we move along. So this is one of the most significant reforms that we have seen. We look at the way the states take it up for implementation, and I would see that in no times to come, shortly, we will see the results of it when we look at prosperity, because that it would enhance income, it would enhance productivity, and it would obviously boost a lot more in terms of economic strength of the country.
Let's now look at infrastructure financing. India has long-term infrastructure needs that obviously requires a lot of money, but there is a projection that I saw of a financing gap there of $1.5 to $2 trillion through 2030 for roads, ports, renewables, strategic sector like defense and semiconductors. Any recommendations that you may have given to the finance minister to bridge this long-term infrastructure gap?
See, yes, of course, for a growing economy, which is so fast in terms of the rate of growth, and as I said, that we can even be faster, and I'm sure that we will be faster. I strongly believe that India can notch double-digit rate of growth. We have the potential, and infrastructure is one of the key pillars which will help us achieve that. And when India would grow, an Indian infrastructure growth rate, as we see moving on in specifically in the areas that you just mentioned, would enable us very strongly to see more opportunities for Indian people. Now, when we need a sort of a focused strategic way to see that the funding pipeline is well done. So a sort of a investment fund is something that we have been suggesting that it comes up. We call it the India Development and Strategic Fund. And there could be two sort of an arms to it. One where we really look at, the second part of it more stresses towards areas where we need capital for issues like rare earths. We need capital for global assets and all of that. The first part is where you talked about infrastructure and key infrastructure areas. So if we are able to see how we can make this into a very important fund available for infrastructure, it just makes it easier. Now, obviously, a fund would require different sources, be it budgetary sources, or one big area that we have been championing and talking about is asset monetization, and how do we see flows coming in through that. We need that PSE equity coming into this fund. We would also look at bonds coming into play when we are able to enrich this fund, so to say. And the way to go would be co-investment is the way we would look at such a fund. And that would, the success of this would go a long way in terms of India creating a strong pipeline of investments and the strategic investments that we talked about, and would actually be very much required when we are moving towards Viksit Bharat. This is something which we would look for, and I would really expect that we see something of that kind in the forthcoming budget.
Okay. You had earlier said that private investment in manufacturing is picking up. So let's talk about the manufacturing ecosystem. Any suggestions you may have made to the government to give a boost there, particularly for MSMEs? They account for 45% of the manufacturing output, around 45% of India's exports. How can affordable patient capital be provided to them so that they can scale up sustainably?
You know, it's very important that for us to move our scale of manufacturing from the present mid-teens that we have been stuck with to as we all want to go towards mid-20s in terms of the percentage of manufacturing as a part of the GDP. Now, in doing so, we find that the large companies are very well poised towards growth, technology. Even large companies have the access to funds, so to say. But where it becomes an issue is the missing middle, and you talked about the mid-sized companies, the small companies. They do not have the power or the ability sometimes to get funding into or long-term funding or patient capital for them to see to it that they are able to invest and have and invest long to see how results come in. Many of them get burnt out, and unless the mid-sized companies and the small companies, as you said, that it occupies a very large part of our manufacturing dimensions. So if we really need to look at how we are able to support them, capital sort of a scheme support, sort of if we don't call it scheme, we call it whatever, a capital fund, which is or a capital support mechanism, which could be important, be created for them to avail, and that would go a long way in terms of the small and the mid-sized companies being able to take risk, the small and mid-sized companies being able to invest further for future. And this is not short. This is not going to be a year. This is a long-term venture. So these types of funding availability to the mid-sized companies would really help not only the supply chain, but the mid-sized companies and the small companies contribute, as you mentioned, a lot to employment generation. Employment generation going forward will come from the small and the mid-sized companies. They are the ones who are going to employ a large number of people. And they are also going to be responsible not only for supporting the large companies in terms of the supply chain, but these guys, if we are able to really look at how we can support and how we can work with them, it will lead to phenomenal focus on our export front too. So all in all, I think we would, that's the segment that requires help and support.
In terms of deep tech, if I may ask that what the budget can do to make India the global artificial intelligence hub, or increasingly help India play a major role in that space while ensuring that there is talent retention after skilling in, say, AI and other technologies, particularly deep tech, and of course, add productivity gains for the industry.
See, AI, India, as we all know, that it's going to host one of the largest AI summits very soon, and one has seen the type of global response towards the AI summit, which is in February, as you know, India hosting, and that will, of course, position India in a big way in terms of leadership as far as AI is concerned. but because a large number of discussions, large number of opportunities are expected to be brought onto the table during that time frame, and the world's best leaders of AI would also be present. But having said that, we have seen in India that there is this focus on the AI mission. There is this focus on how we are really looking at the AI policies, and how we are able to also use AI for our companies, for even the government and governance, so to say, for even areas like in the social dimensions to healthcare, etc. So I think, having said that, India's scope to leverage AI is so very high, and with our brain power that we have, we would be certainly in a position to sort of take advantage of AI, but also create policies around it which will be ethical and strong, and also contribute to the global policy making on AI, because this is a subject where we would need a lot of contribution across the world, and Global South's leadership really remains with India. And I think that's where it would be important for us to also contribute it in a manner that will not only help us leverage AI for business, but leverage AI for governance, leverage AI for the best practices, and also in the policy front. And I think India is doing phenomenally. I mean, India's index, if you see, of in the AI scale, as we have seen it being acknowledged across the world, there is a lot that we can leverage in terms of making AI contribute towards our growth and sustainability, sustained growth. You mentioned about skills, and you mentioned about people vis-a-vis AI. And I see AI also, and the way India is structuring itself, and if we are able to, and we are developing that capacity vis-a-vis AI, we would be able to actually turn this into an opportunity of different types of jobs that will become available for us, for our people, for our younger people, for our next gen. And it's just not to be seen as the effect of AI on job losses, but the effect of AI on creating newer opportunities for jobs. Of course, there will be a shift of jobs, but how quickly we understand that, and how quickly we get into that space of leveraging our talent and skills and capacity building on AI would help us achieve the best from it.
So to sum it up, just the headline priorities for the viewers for the budget from the perspective of the Indian industry, if you could just name them.
If we can get that foresight into the private sector by making it invest into future-ready industry, by bringing in research and development and innovation of its products and its services, it will go a long way. And it cannot be done through subsidies. It can be done through rewarding and awarding in a different manner. And if the budget can really look at it, we've seen schemes which needs to be implemented and which can be, and I think the budget can go along with that. So that's one big area that I would like to keep into it. This is a time for reforms in the budget, and this is a time for seeing the next story of growth in India, which will, of course, be putting us on top of the world.
We'll leave it at that. Thank you for sharing Indian industry's budget wish list with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mulman. Thank you very much.